Hi guys, and welcome to yet another true crime video. For those of you who are new here, hi, my name is Bongi and you're watching True Crime with Bongi. On today's video, we're going to be talking about the notorious Ananias Mathe, who was a serial rapist, an armed robber, and a whole lot of things. But before I get into that, you guys already know that I have to issue out my usual disclaimer that I mean absolutely no disrespect to anybody that I'm going to be talking about in this video and all the families that were and are affected. This video is purely for educational purposes, and all the information that I'm going to be talking about in this video was gotten off of the internet and simply compiled into one video. So now let's get into the case. So Ananias Mathe was born in 1976 in a small village in Shai, Mozambique, and his parents were Ananias Mathe and Sophia Matuse, and they had a total of 11 children, but out of the 11 only 2 survived, and that was Ananias and his brother. Growing up, Ananias was a very intelligent kid. He also loved mathematics and excelled at it. And even later on in his life, during trial, it will be determined that Ananias had an IQ that was higher than that of an average person. So, you know, he was a pretty smart guy. In his adult life, Ananias worked for the Mozambique Defense Armed Forces before moving to South Africa in 1999 to find a better job. He had 2 wives, Celeste and Elizabeth, and he had a total of 7 children. And he was also taking care of his mother and his other siblings' children. So when he told his family that he was going to go look for a better job, they understood and they were excited, and so off he went to South Africa. But it turns out that Ananias was actually not looking for an honest living. He was actually planning on robbing people upon his arrival in South Africa. Ananias would break into people's homes with a gun in one hand and a torch in another hand, and he would also carry with him poisoned sausages in case the people had dogs, and he would throw the sausages at the dogs so that the dogs would eat and eventually die and wouldn't make a noise and wake their owners up or even bite him. So he would do that before breaking into their homes, and once the dogs had died, he would proceed to break into their homes. And on the 19th of August 1999, he broke into Diane and Alwyn Hirsch's home, and he took with him their car and their sound system. Throughout 1999 all the way to 2002, he would break into people's homes following this plan that he had drawn out. On December 3rd, 2003, he broke into Tracy Jacobson Goldberg's house with a gun in one hand and a torch in another, as per usual. And Tracy was asleep with her son on this particular night. So she heard a noise and she woke up to see Ananias standing at the end of her bed, and he told her to keep quiet and that he was going to rape her. So of course Tracy was trying to fight him off. She was kicking and pushing him off, and whilst she was doing this, she accidentally kicked one of the hands that was holding the gun, and the gun went off and shot her. And at one point Ananias pulled her from the bedroom to the passage, and when they got there, Tracy continued fighting. At some point, eventually, she managed to push Ananias outside, and once he was outside, she closed the security gate. And once the security gate was closed, Tracy tried to close the door, but before she could fully close the door, Ananias fired a couple of shots inside the house, shooting Tracy 2 more times. Tracy was shot 3 times in her upper body that night, but fortunately she survived the whole attack, and Ananias did not successfully rape her. Unfortunately though, that wouldn't be the case for many women, as Ananias would successfully rape many more women. His crimes continued all the way through 2003 and 2004. He was robbing people and also raping them in their own homes. In August 2004, Ananias broke into Charles and Julie Pringle's home in Parktown at around 3:30 in the morning. So Charles heard a noise and he woke up to see this tiny man standing in his room, and so he could clearly see that this was a home invasion or robbery. So he started throwing little things at Ananias, who then responded by shooting him in the collarbone. At this point, he had already taken their car keys, so immediately after shooting Charles in the collarbone, he took off and left with their car. From Parktown, Ananias went to Parkhurst, where he raped a 28-year-old woman. And 4 months later, he rapes another woman in her Parkhurst home. And on the same month, on the 16th of December, he broke into Heidi Smith's home and raped her. Heidi was asleep in her bedroom when she heard a noise coming from her office, so she woke up, and upon waking up she saw a light flashing around, and so she switched on her bedside lamp, and that was when her bedroom door opened and Ananias walked in. So Ananias walked in the room and showed Heidi the gun and told her that he would shoot her if she didn't obey. So Heidi just did as Ananias said, and she also said that she was scared that there would be more people in the house, so she didn't even try to fight him off. He then took some cables and tied Heidi up and then proceeded to rape her. And then once he was done, he just took Heidi's car and left with it. It was at the fourth scene that investigators found Ananias' fingerprint on one of the light bulbs in the home that he had broken into, and that was when investigators could finally link him to all the prior 3 break-ins and rapes. And on the 31st of January 2005, the police arrested Ananias at one of his hideouts in Kensington with the help of a police informant who had informed the police that Ananias had returned from his trip in Mozambique. He was taken to the Johannesburg Central Police Station high security facility, which he escaped from 3 months after his arrest. And after his arrest, his crimes continued, but this time his crimes were taking place in Northwest and Limpopo. However, he did gradually make his return to Parktown in Johannesburg, Gauteng. Police would finally locate and arrest him in November 2005 after he was linked to a rape that took place in Germiston. I don't know how they managed to link him to that rape, but I think it is important to mention that during this rape he made the boyfriend of the victim watch as he raped the victim, and so the boyfriend could have been able to identify Ananias as the rapist, and that could have been how they managed to link him to that rape in Germiston. He was then taken to the CMEX prison in Pretoria, which is, I think I've mentioned this in one of my videos, the highest security prison in South Africa. But Ananias somehow managed to escape from this prison as well, and it was after this escape that Ananias was stabbed the Houdini man, and police also found out that in Mozambique he was known as the Rat because of how difficult it is to catch a rat. And yeah, he also gained further notoriety after this escape in 2006 for becoming the first person to ever escape from the CMEX prison. Police started their search for him, and they even managed to locate him on 3 or 4 occasions, but again the Rat or the Houdini man managed to escape capture. So investigators then took it upon themselves to also go to Mozambique for further investigations, and this was when they learned that Ananias was also known as the Rat in Mozambique. And they also spoke to some police officers in Shai to get more information about Ananias, but the police officers would just get hostile whenever they were asked about Ananias, and the investigators would soon find out that the police officers were becoming hostile because some of them had been on Ananias's payroll before. They also went to Ananias's home to investigate and, question his family, and that's when they discovered that Ananias was actually building a mansion for his family. So that meant that he was stealing all these cars in South Africa, selling them, and then sending the money back home to build his family a mansion. Nonetheless, Ananias would break into Cameron Michael John's house at around 5 a.m. on the 4th of December 2006, and this would appear to be his last house break-in. At around 5:50 in the morning, Cameron woke up and she saw Ananias, who then told her to just go back to her room and keep quiet. And Cameron was about to do that when Ananias saw that Cameron's daughter had just woken up. So he told Cameron to take her daughter and to just go back to her bedroom, and they should both keep quiet and keep their heads down. And at around 6:15, he took their car keys and he left with Cameron's car. Right after he left, Cameron contacted Altec Netstar, which is a car tracking company. I could not find whether it's still a company till this day or it was just a company back then, but I think it still exists. But anyways, Netstar started their search for Cameron's car. Netstar let out 2 men in a van to search for Cameron's car on the road, and they also had a helicopter searching for Cameron's car from the sky. So after these 2 men in a van located Cameron's car, Ananias realized this, and so he jumped out of the car and started running on foot. When the 2 Netstar men saw this, they also jumped out of their van and they started chasing Ananias. Ananias had with him a black bag and he was also wearing an orange shirt, and this is what you can see on the documentary as they were reenacting the events that played out. So Ananias was wearing an orange shirt and he had a black bag, and as the 2 men were catching up to him, Ananias realized that he had to let go of some dead weight, so he took off the black bag and he just threw it away and he continued running. But he also realized that the helicopter could easily detect him and the men could also easily detect him because of his orange shirt. So he also took that shirt off and wrapped it around his left wrist and he continued running. So the 2 Netstar men lost him, and so they contacted the guys up in the helicopter and asked them, where's Ananias? And the men in the helicopter told them that Ananias had gotten into one of the houses nearby. So the 2 men started searching for Ananias in all these houses until they located him in one of the houses nearby. So after locating Ananias, they decided that they were gonna walk him back to the van where they would then maybe take him to the police. But before doing that, they were gonna search him to ensure that he was clean, he didn't have anything on him. So they searched him, they patted him down, and they didn't find anything on Ananias. So they continued to take him from the house to the van. So one of the men was walking in front of him and another one was walking behind him. And as they were walking to the van, Ananias turned and stabbed the guy at the back, the guy behind him, right underneath the eye, and he started running. It turns out that he had a knife hidden underneath the orange shirt that he had wrapped around his vest, and these men had missed it while they were searching him. In response to him stabbing one of the men under the eye, he was shot 3 times and he collapsed. He was actually shot the first time and he kept running, and he was shot the second time but he kept running, and so they had to shoot him the 3rd time, and that was when he finally collapsed and they took him to the hospital. Ananias Mathe was finally captured. Ananias Mathe's trial began in 2007, and there were about 150 witnesses who were ready to testify against him. There was also an additional 2 witnesses who were willing to testify against Ananias, but they disappeared mysteriously before they could testify against him. And I also think it's important to mention that all of Ananias's victims were actually white, and it's so rare for perpetrators to cross the racial line to attack other people from other races unless their crimes are racially motivated crimes. So that was really confusing for me, but there's that also. Ananias Mathe received a 54-year sentence for his 64 charges, including housebreaking, armed robbery, hijacking, rape, attempted murder, and murder. I couldn't find who he had murdered, but I'm thinking he probably shot somebody during his crime spree. He fell ill in 2016, but the police or the prison warders thought that it was just yet another scheme of his to get them to take him to a hospital where he would then escape. But it turned out that he was actually not playing around this time. He was really ill. So on the 27th of December 2016, he died at King Edward's Hospital after suffering from constipation and urinary retention. But there are some people who believe that Ananias Mathe is still alive and he's somewhere out there. He simply escaped capture. I don't know how, but I personally believe that he is really dead. And I know that he was known as the Rat for his ability to escape capture, but I am also one of those people who believe that death was Ananias Mathe's final escape. So that brings us to the end of today's video, you guys. Please leave your case suggestions in the comment section down below. Also like this video and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye.